Welcome to an episode of Just One More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lee, Carrie, and Lacey.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello.
You can find us online at justonemorefix.com or on Twitter at justonemorefix. If you like us, head over to iTunes or to Google Play and give us a rating and a comment. In this episode, we're going to review Tales from the Loop. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Kier,
I'm Haley.
And I'm Jay from Gallifrey Public Radio,
a podcast member of the Gonna Geek Network.
just like the one you're listening to right now.
The opinions expressed are those of each individual.
Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And get ready, because geekiness begins in 3,
2,
1.
Welcome to the review with Just One More Fix. As you heard, and by request, for those of you that don't follow us out on Twitter, we put a poll up to see what game it was that we should review next, and the choices were Tales from the Loop, Ortus Regni,
And the other choices don't matter because they didn't win.
Expedition, the RPG card game, was one of them, and I'm not sure what the other RPG was. Fate of Freeport was the other one. And by popular demand, and actually overwhelming, Tales from the Loop was on the list for us to review this time. So, and I think we're probably going to do that as our review format from now on. It'll probably have a couple RPG games and a couple board games, and that's probably how we'll lay out our reviews from now on, so we can get some more feedback from you guys, and you guys can kind of guide what it is that we're going to review for what you want to hear sooner rather than later.
And you can see what we voted for.
You're still
good.
not
I'm
loud
glad
enough.
you guys voted too because I wasn't sure if I was supposed to. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing it because I saw James did.
Yeah, I voted on it. My opinion's gonna be heard. You better believe it. So first, I guess we're gonna turn this one over to you because you're the one that's the most familiar with this game. You funded it on Kickstarter, which was, I believe, the first game in your downfall to Kickstarter, if I'm not mistaken.
This is the first thing I ever backed on Kickstarter.
Right on. So it was your first entry foray into the Kickstarter world.
Solid decision.
Right on. I agree.
It's
I'm
led
glad you
to
made
a
it.
sparkling addiction.
Who is this game produced by and designed by?
So this game is designed by an artist named Simon Stalsberg, and he did, as you know, you might assume, all of the art for the book, which is really what kind of sucked me in anyway, that and the one-sentence explanation of what this game is, which is role-playing in the 1980s that never was. So to me, the front cover especially feels very much like E.T. And I know a lot of people say Stranger Things, but just with the bicycles and the...
Well, E.T. was first, you know.
Yeah, E.T. was first.
And while Stranger Things is awesome, it draws from a lot of that E.T. and
you get kind of the technology aspect in Stranger Things with the secret research facility, but I feel like it's more in your face in E.T. with the government going and like setting up these big quarantine areas basically. Plus you get the extraterrestrial technology. Anyhow, so role playing in the 1980s that never was. So you basically play a gang of kids in this game as every 1980s movie, sci-fi or not genre, The Goonies, Monster Club, again, E.T., Stranger Things, a club of kids.
Right. Who's the manufacturer or the publisher?
It's done with Free League, but it's actually published by Modiphius Entertainment.
Okay, very cool.
And so I'm not sure exactly where Free League comes in. I think maybe they're kind of a conglomerate that helps with the actual writing and producing of the book is I think how it goes. And then it's published by Modiphius.
Very cool.
But don't quote me on that.
Right.
So that's kind of what the game is about. The physical book itself is the larger RPG book style. So it's a full size, like 8.5 by 11 book.
Ooh, it's a wizard's tome.
Yeah. It's nearly 200 pages. Not quite. I think it reads in at like 190 some.
Right.
It has a full color cover.
I have a hard time saying that.
Like
Very
a
good.
large art piece. And
Right.
it is very much a book you can kind of judge by its cover. So in the back, you see the 3 cooling towers that are considered iconic to this loop science that Simon Stalsberg has created for this world. And you see 4 kids very much in 1980s apparel, jackets and book bags with their bicycles staring off at these loops.
Right, which are kind of in the distance with a fog or a haze across.
Yeah, and glowing green and yellow lights on top of them.
It's a very iconic kind of cover.
It looks
And
kind of
even-
Star Warsy to me.
And even though the book is bigger,
It's the bicycles
filled
that make
with
it
a lot
so.
of artwork, so it's not intimidating like some of those bigger books.
Well, this one kid does sort of look like he has a Darth Maul lightsaber too.
I was thinking of the Tuscan gun gaffy sticks.
Oh, yeah, that as well.
That one looks like
It's got a little tassel on it.
The towers could totally be those giant moving things that the Jawas work out of.
Moving on. There's a very short, concise index in the back. Pages are very thick, which is nice, but they're not like those weird glossy pages. They're like, I don't know what you would call that.
It's a heavier paper stock.
Paper stock, which I like. And there is a lot of art in this book, and it is all very, very thematic. There are some black and white sketches of NPC characters that you can include, and then lots of full color art of different machines and technology aspects. Now, there are lovely, lovely maps as well. So 2 of the pre-made settings for this are somewhere in Sweden, and the Malaren facility in Sweden, and I don't know that I'm saying that right, or any other of the Swedish names in here, which I would like to personally thank the creator of this for deciding to make a setting in America as well, because Boulder City, Colorado is very easy, and all the NPCs actually, they are the same NPCs, but he gives them both a Swedish name and an Americanized name, English name that you can use, which is very handy when you're looking at this going, that's a lot of consonants.
Well, it just makes it easier to keep the names in your head, because if they're not names that you're familiar with, it's easier, I guess. So,
and some of them I kept anyway. Like when we had the mad scientist Gunner, I just kept the name Gunner because I liked that more.
Right.
And it was not difficult to say. So that is the basic layout of the book. The system for this is actually a system that has already been used. It's called the Year Zero Game Engine. The game system was created by Thomas Herenstam. And I don't know if I'm saying that right either. So the basic breakdown is it is an attribute plus skill system. It uses D6s. It is different than a lot of other systems, though, because you only succeed on a 6. But...
So you're rolling a pool of dice, and then
you're rolling a pool of dice, attribute plus skill, and then you succeed on a 6. Now, when it's not just a flat one success or more and you succeed, it's 1 success to succeed, and additional successes can be spent on bonus effects. So that's kind of, I think, where it makes up for the low success chance, if that makes sense.
So like the extra successes or extra 6s that you get allow you to say things that are true in the game, or like just increase the effectiveness of your success?
Both.
Okay.
It depends on what you're rolling. So like when you roll, for example, an investigation sort of test, you would roll mind plus investigate. And then at 1 success, you would get the information. And for additional successes, you can ask more questions about the situation.
Right.
When you're talking about a skill like lead, you roll heart plus lead, and the number of successes actually gives you an extra dice pool that you can use, and all the kids at the table can use for future rolls. So it's basically like, you're the leader of this group and you've got your team pumped up and you guys are going to go kick some butt. And so now they have these pool of dice because you've done so well at inspiring them to go and do this task.
Right. It does bear mentioning, I know you said that it's attribute plus skill, but it does bear mentioning, I think, that when I hear that, I think of my mind immediately goes to World of Darkness, and maybe that's just because that's where I have a lot of experience with. But this is a lot more pared down than like a White Wolf character sheet.
So you have 4 key attributes.
And then it looks like there's maybe a dozen skills or so. So something more along the lines of amount of skills in like a regular Fate core game. It might even be too many skills. So it's pared down. It's not as...
Well, it breaks down like the World of Darkness system, though, in that the skills are directly relatable to a specific attribute. So each core attribute has 3 subset skills that you can have ranks in. So your basic attributes are body, tech, heart, and mind. Pretty simple, and you can pretty much figure out what would go where under that. Some of the things get a little bit trickier under skills as to where you would put them.
That's pretty much the layout of the system, right? And then there's some opportunities to get bonus dice and things that you mentioned with items and help from friends or whatever. But the one thing I thought was kind of neat is the way the conditions work.
Okay. When you fail at a task and take damage, you take a condition. So there are only 5 conditions, and you select one that is appropriate to whatever task it is that you're completing. So your conditions are angry, scared, exhausted, injured, and broken.
And you'll notice one of those is not dead.
Yes, you. It actually says in the rule book, you do not die in this game. There is 0 chance of death. What will happen, though, is that you will fill up a condition, you'll take negatives to rolls with that, and then you will check additional conditions until the only thing that's left is broken. And once you take the condition broken, you are assumed to automatically fail at everything until you recover those lost conditions.
The thing that I think is cool about the idea of being broken is it doesn't... like, I feel like it kind of implies a physically broken thing, but I also think it works for like an emotionally or a mentally broken thing to
Right.
where it kind of goes, it's the final condition, but it kind of works both ways in that sense, which I think is a cool aspect of the game.
And the conditions are broken down like that too. So it wouldn't necessarily, angry, scared, and exhausted could apply to, a lot of different tasks. So other kind of additional things that are added in is each character gets an iconic item.
Well, hang on. Let's back up to
Like the
the
subtypes.
roles. Yeah.
So this game kind of reminds me of taking a page from Apocalypse World when you're talking about your character type. So you pick a basic character role. And so just some of those are like the rocker, the weirdo, the jock. They're kind of like if you think about the Breakfast Club
that or the Goonies.
or the Goonies. Yeah, you have your basically essential 1980s child archetypes.
Right. They go into, they fit perfectly into the movie or into a story.
So you're going to play one of those. And the page about the character almost breaks down like a worksheet for when you're selecting things before you actually put them on your character sheet, which I thought was handy as a GM because then I actually had you guys use them like worksheets, circle the things that you were planning on doing and jot some things down. And then I used those to kind of keep track of your characters a little better. And you guys got to keep your character
Right.
sheets.
It was easy to play the first game too because bits of your personality are automatically in that worksheet, and so are tie-ins to the rest of the game.
Right. It had a very much the character generation process was very easy because it had that kind of that how Apocalypse World works, where you get the playbook and then you just make some choices and then jot some things down and then you're off to the running. I think our character creation process was maybe 10, 15 minutes, and that was with questions involved about things.
And
It's
that
very
was the first
straightforward.
time out the gate, too.
Yeah. So we didn't have any experience with the system at all.
And so all the characters in the game are aged 10 to 15. Once your character turns 16, then you are done and you have to make a new character.
Right.
What is also kind of neat about this is older characters get more points to put into skills, but younger characters get more luck points. And so then luck points can be spent to kind of re-roll the dice to change outcomes for successes.
Very cool.
So there are a couple other cool things. It has you pick a favorite song from the 1980s for your character,
Right.
which I did kind of like play during the game. They don't really have any specific game effects that are mentioned from these. It's just kind of like a quirky flavor text thing.
Right.
Each character gets an iconic item. And these are very much useful. Other items can be created that give bonuses during the game, but your iconic item is something that you start with that you can use for a bonus whenever it's relevant. So we had our son Isaiah played a character who was the troublemaker, and he had a skateboard. And so anytime he used this skateboard, and he found some very inventive ways to do it, like smacking birds to death with it.
Right.
It was like not expected, where he ended up getting bonuses for the skateboard.
I think that pretty much lays out the system. I mean, there's some more minutia to it, but it's very simple and straightforward, and it worked well. I don't.
Building the hideout was really cool too. Like it was a good way to see how our group fit in with each other.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those iconic things from the 80s movies too. Like you have to have the treehouse or the clubhouse or whatever. So yeah, because each person gets to add a detail to it. Isn't that how it is?
Yeah. It was kind of like the final part of why we hang out with each other.
Right.
Which I liked.
Yeah, and it's something that is in the book as well. You guys create the hideout together, and it's the other thing I like about it is it's assumed that no one can find the hideout unless you take them there.
Right.
It's never like a risk option, like this is your safe space, and you can regain conditions by spending time there, just like hanging out,
Right.
basically.
That's an important piece of the whole thing. then.
Right. And the other way to get rid of those conditions is each kid has an anchor that's built into the system. So this is kind of like their moral support. It's generally an adult, which is interesting because adults in this world are your adults of the 1980s. They're not helpful. They don't believe anything you say because you're a kid, and generally don't really have any interest in you as a human being.
Well, it works for the genre, but I think it even works better in terms of the way it makes the game work. So it's
Right.
like you can go to them for help, but they're not gonna do much for you. Just like in Stranger Things, when they make the spoiler alert, I guess, when they make the phone call to the AV teacher, he's kind of like, "What are you talking about? Just here's the information. Go away."
You see the exact same thing in the Goonies movie when Chunk calls the police and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, last time, it was this, and before that, it was that.
Right.
Yeah, sure thing, kid.
Okay, so that's pretty much the system. So you mentioned that the tagline for the game is "This is the 80s that never was." So what is different about Tales from the Loop from the regular 80s that everyone knows?
Okay, so the loop is like this super energy creating sort of apparatus. It reminds me of the Hadron Collider because it's like this big giant thing that's buried under the ground, basically. So there's that, which is constantly going, and it's actually mentioned like where you're located at, you're within the loop, and you can hear the constant humming of it under the ground. So it's almost like having the refrigerator in your house. Like it is ever present, it is always there. And then there's also something called magnetrine technology, which sort of makes like the hovercraft thing possible, basically, to just uber simplify it. And then there are some other sort of genetic AI technologies that are different too. So there is the possibility in this game to have artificial intelligence,
like a speaking spell that works,
basically. It sort of put me more in the mind of like K2 from the newest Star Wars movie, especially like when you look at the picture of the robot that they have, and it's like, oh hey. Dinosaurs, like you could definitely do a Jurassic Park game with this.
Cool.
That's a possibility in here as well.
Cool.
I like how the loop is like intertwined with everything we do. So our parents probably work at the loop. Our parents are probably super smart. Our parents probably workaholics. Not necessarily. All of us had a different story because there are people that have to support these scientists. But that was kind of like a cool.
I don't know about your guys' character sheets, but when I made the choices for my character, it was kind of already put in there. Like I had a choice of one of three things I had to choose, and all of them involved the loop. Either my aunt was a scientist there, or I can't remember what the other two were because I didn't choose those two. But it directly drew you into that piece of the setting because I mean it's in the title. It kind of has to pull you into it, or it should anyway.
Well, I don't remember if I made mine up or took them off the sheet, but I played the hick, and my parents were farmers. They didn't really have anything to do with it other than being there.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
We adapted the setting to be at the location where we're at, which you can absolutely do, with any game. But the settings that are given are very much the same in that this is considered like a rural setting. So it's not like the loop is underneath Los Angeles and there's lots of other things you can do. When you live in the rural area, this is where the bulk of jobs and the entire funding source of these communities comes from. So no matter what you do, you're going to have some sort of tie-in to this facility, whether you want to or not.
It kind of gave me the feel of the way Stranger Things is. There's this thing that exists there and it's a big part of the community, but the community is still kind of like a small to mid-sized community kind of a thing. Not a big city, but
it's a rural community.
Enough to have a town there or whatever. So, right on. So, what do you guys think that this game does? Or, well, is there anything else that you guys think we should mention about the setting that's like very specific for it? Very kind of iconic? I mean, because like with the Stranger Things coming out and some of the other shows that we mentioned with Goonies and that kind of stuff, it's very much in that vein. If you didn't grow up in the 80s or you're not familiar with it because of being young, then just watch those things and it'll pretty much lay everything out except for the specific differences.
I did think that it was interesting how much we had to kind of remind everybody what was there in the 80s and what wasn't. And our 11-year-old son played, so we kind of sat down in the beginning and was like, okay, so these are the things that exist. Like cell phones are not a thing. Like if you want to make a phone call, you're going to have to, go inside your buddy's house and ask his mom to use the phone kind of thing. And like it's going to be connected to the wall. You can't just take it with you. But at some point, one of our characters did get a computer. So we talked about the size and the cumbersomeness of this computer and the fact that it's not going to be something you could pack up and just take somewhere and how you were going to get it to work and all of this. And at one point he asked if, why don't you just Google that on your computer? So then we had to have a conversation about Google and internet and what computers were actually capable of doing at this point.
All right. So what do you guys think that Tales from the Loop does well that like makes it what it is? Besides just being in the setting of being in the 80s, like what about the game does it do well?
You are immediately in character. It is fun. You are that character. You are that kid. And somehow they manage to do that and leave out all the potential horror that comes with being a child. I mean, it's there, but more in the sense that this is the 80s and you're doing something and your parents aren't available to come help you because they're busy, but it's not horrifying.
Right. I never even occurred to me until you just said that. It is very much not horror. It feels more like adventure than horror.
Yes.
Because Goonies could have very easily been a horror movie, right? But it is not. It is an adventure story. You know what I mean? And I guess while Stranger Things, we kind of referenced that, it's got some horror elements to it, but it feels more like suspense. And except for a very few specific points, it's very suspenseful as opposed to like horrific. Do you think so? Or
you're scared for those kids, but they're kids. And for some reason, you just like, It's the way that luck works in this. The younger you are, the more luck you have. You're a child still.
Right.
The badness, as bad as it is never going to kill you. It's like, I don't know. I like that part of this.
Being not invincible is totally an adult thing.
That's true.
What about you, Lisa? What do you think?
Oh, do I get to have an opinion?
Well, yeah, I suppose you should. I mean, you're the one that like what drew.
This game
what,
is for me. So the movies that we talk about and then the 1980s inspired thing, it's more than just nostalgia for me. It's just a really fun place to exist because it is really not like today at all. Like there's a certain amount of freedom
right
that was there that isn't quite to the same degree. Like if you wanted to just ride your bike to your friend's house that was 3 miles up the road on the other side of town, you just did it. I'm like, you could leave your parent a note. You really didn't even necessarily have to ask. You just be like, going over to Bobby's house, Mom,
Right.
I'll be back when the streetlights come on. And then you'd ride your bike and you'd go. And you could really go hours without checking in.
Yeah. Well, like the
And
whole
nobody would be
latchkey
able to
kind
get,
of a thing. Yeah.
I like the freedom and danger that both comes with the idea of nobody being able to get a hold of you.
Well, that and the innocence of the danger with the combination of the innocence of a kid is a fun combination of things.
It took me back to being a child in a very good way because I grew up on a military base. We could ride our bike a couple buildings away and not come back until the lights came
Right.
on. And I don't know, a lot of kids my age had that ability or that kind of freedom, but I did. And so I felt like I was a kid again.
It is very evoking of that 80s feel. Kind of like the same way I had this. Part of it is nostalgia, but part of it is just the funness of it. And it evoked a lot of the same feelings I had about watching Stranger Things. It was very much the same for me, the way I just sort of remember things and all the different pieces to it. So, right on. Do you have anything, Lee, or no?
Crime rates have gone down steadily in the last 30 years. Yay, cell phones.
So you don't like this game?
No, I
All right
totally do.
then. So where
I'm
do
not
you?
saying that it's more dangerous today. I'm saying that parents are more overprotective and kids have less freedom.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have a cell phone actually gives them less freedom because you're constantly able to access them. You can download a GPS system to track your kids, and most parents I know do, especially those with teenagers. So I can pull up the phone and be like, oh, look, there he is over here. Oh, look, there he goes over there. Then it was like more of a trust system. And granted, we were all violating it, and I don't know what kind of trust there really was.
Not.
But
Who do you guys think this game is for? Is there a specific target group that you think like is this a game just for people that want to be nostalgic about the 80s, or is it?
I would say it's probably a game mostly for people that want to be nostalgic about the 80s. I think probably our age group is the real target audience for this. I think
Seems
probably if you got to the age group that was maybe more like in their late 40s, early 50s, they might not really enjoy this as much. Not that they wouldn't enjoy it at all. Now, I think you can go younger, and like our son had a really good time with this. So you could definitely play this with kids that are the ages of 10 to 15, but I think they're going to find a different kind of enjoyment out of it than your 30-year-old age group.
I also think that being able to we played this game with Isaiah, but it was ran by a person who could remember these things and draw them and have a kind of a compelling way to convey them that wasn't hokey, because it's something we remember very fondly.
Maybe a little hokey.
Well, yeah, but and I think you're right in that it's a good game for younger players as well. But I think that it will play better if you have someone involved who has a better connection to the 80s as opposed to someone who doesn't have any connection to it at all, I guess.
I would very happily bring this to a group of kids. The character creation was easy. The roles are easy. Even young kids can add
Right.
and tell you how many sixes they got on a die.
It's almost like historical fiction for that age group,
Yeah.
which really sort of makes my brain and heart hurt in a certain way.
Right on. So who do you guys think this game is not for, or where does it not do well?
Combat. No combat monkeys here.
True. But I think it's designed that way intentionally because you're kids.
Right.
There's no 8-year-old wading into battle, laying waste
But
to the.
if you routinely game with somebody that tries to make every character a combat monkey, they may not find this game as
that's true.
exciting.
That's very
I
fair.
think those characters would. There is body and sneak, force, move. You can be a bully very easily and still get that combat fun.
Yeah, but I think there's a distinction between being a bully and being like a combat wonky. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Well, I think the fact that this game doesn't track hit points and that there's no risk of death puts the emphasis elsewhere automatically.
Yeah.
So if that's, what you're really here for, I don't think
This
you're
may
going
not be
to.
the.
Yeah, I think there are other games you would enjoy more.
That's fair.
This definitely puts much more of an emphasis on role playing. And the conversation is meant to be passed around. And it says you may not make a skill check until you tell me actually what you're doing. You have to describe what you're doing.
Right.
And the skills are a little bit fluid that way. So you can approach the same task from different directions and it would involve a different role.
So we already mentioned that we think this is a good game for both adults and a good game to start kids off with if you're interested in some family gaming or that kind of thing. Do you think this is a good game to as a first-time RPG for someone, to introduce someone to RPGs?
I think this would be a very good game to introduce somebody to an RPG.
I think I agree 100%. If you're in the right age group where you grew up kind of in the 80s or the early 90s, I think this is a perfect way to introduce someone to the world of tabletop RPGs. I agree.
I would say, as far as ways that it falls short, I did have some difficulty with the skills, and I can't remember a specific example off the top of my head. I wish I would have written it down.
Charm versus empathize.
Charm. Yeah. Okay. So, no, there is somewhere where it talks about empathize, though. I didn't have as hard a time with that one, but there was one specific role where I couldn't, every time it came up, I couldn't figure out quite exactly maybe where it was supposed to go. And it seemed like roles like investigate plus, mind plus investigate seemed to get used a lot, whereas other roles didn't. And I kind of tried to switch some things around and maybe encourage you guys to go in a few different directions as we went on to try and hit some of those other roles. So it felt like
Spread the skill around.
those other skills were getting more play. So I don't know if that's just my shortcoming in running the first couple of games or if it's something that's system inherent, but those are my thoughts on it anyway.
There is also an adventure that comes in the core book.
There's more than one.
Oh, is it
it's
more than
actually it's 4 adventures, and it's
Like a mini
called
campaign?
like a different seasons. So you can either run it together as a campaign across 4 different seasons, or you can run it as individual adventures. So the last 4 chapters of the book are actually dedicated to pre-made scenarios.
That's really cool because usually when you buy a core book, it might come with 1 adventure, maybe 2, but to have it actually kind of like a little mini campaign in there is an awesome feature, especially if you're getting started into RPGs and you haven't run or created a lot of games.
They are done really well. The list of NPCs are fleshed out and related to each other. It gives you several hooks to try and get your players to join in and some options about ways to direct them if you're having. So it's not like, okay, we need to go find the giant bird's nest and the only way we're going to do that is by following this bird. It gives you 3 potential lead-ins to find this single location.
Well, it's kind
and
of
if you don't ever find that one, it's okay. You still have these other 3 places. And each one, like there were a couple of maps, the map of an inside of a ship, 2 different maps of houses in this, and each NPC had a picture. Like it was all very well fleshed out.
It reminds me of the 3-clue rule because I think at the core of this game, it is an adventure game, but a lot of it involves kind of like kids solving some kind of a mystery or running around trying to figure out what's going on, right? Would you agree with that? I think that they do a good job in the way it was laid out, that everything is connected. So there's not a lot of loose ends to follow to lead you way off the trail. It all draws itself back together towards the center of the mystery. So, all right on. So I think that pretty much is, we mentioned, that's pretty much it, right?
I think that's it. Do you guys have anything else to add?
It's really hard to succeed at things sometimes.
Yeah, if your dice pool is kind of small, it can be hard, but I think that's where drawing on other players for help and your luck, maybe.
Also, you're a kid.
Things are hard. That's true. Yeah, that's a fair point. I agree. So yeah. Does this have a succeed at a cost feature to it or no?
There are several things built in. So first of all, you can use your iconic item for a bonus. You can tap your pride if it's something that's relevant to your pride to get a bonus. You can use luck points for rerolls. And then you can also do something called pushing your luck, which gives you another kind of reroll option. But you take double conditions if you fail once you push your luck.
So
but really the best way it does it is by helping other players or by doing rolls outside of the task you're completing to stack bonus successes to give you
the chances to get a 6.
Additional modifiers to the current roll.
Which is like a lot of kids having this really masterful plan to complete one little thing, and you all have to work together and do your little part, and it's break time.
Basically, yeah.
Right on. So, is that it? Anything else about Tales from the Loop?
Did you like it?
I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a great, lot of fun game. So, Tales from the Loop from Modifius Games. We like this game?
Yeah.
Yes, I even liked character creation.
Oh my goodness. Right on. Tales from the Loop. Check it out. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can find us at justonemorefix.com and follow us on Twitter at justonemorefix.